They said it could not be built. Then they said it had been cut down. Yet in the middle of the Saudi desert, machines still move, cranes still rise, and a new idea of a city keeps taking shape. This is the line in 2025. A plan so bold, it made headlines everywhere. A wall of a city that is 500 meters tall and aims to stretch 170 kilometers, end to end. No cars, no roads, everything close by. Fast transit from one end to the other. It sounds like science fiction, but the real question for this year is simple. What is actually there on the ground? What is moving ahead? What is on hold? And what can we expect in the next decade? Let us set the scene. The line is the centerpiece of a wider region called NEOM. When it was announced a few years ago, many people thought it would stay as glossy videos and shiny renders. Then the first drone clips and satellite pictures arrived. We could see a long trench cut into the desert. We could see camps for workers. We could see trucks moving day after day, bit by bit. The plan left the screen and touched real sand and rock. After that came a new wave of headlines. Reports said the full plan would be narrowed. Leadership changed. Money would be focused on the first part, rather than the full length. Some took this as a sign that the dream was fading. Others said it was a normal step for a project this large. In 2025, the picture is clearer. Work is still going on, but it is targeted. The first section is the priority. Think of it as a live sample of the idea. If that sample works, more can follow. So what is the idea? The line is built on a simple promise. Place most needs within a short walk. Stack layers to save land. Cut out long car rides. Use clean energy. Build transit that can take you across the city in minutes. Tall, narrow, dense, and designed to be efficient by default. That is the vision. Now, we compare that to the reality we can see. The first significant part of construction is focused around a cluster of modules. You can picture each module as a very large block of the future city. In 2025, the active area most people talk about covers roughly 2.5 kilometers. Within this zone are 3 major modules lined up one after another. Each one targets the full 500-meter height. Together they make a short but complete sample of the city wall. This is where teams are pouring time, money, and concrete. This is also where a feature called the hidden Marina will cut through the structure. From above, the trench looks deeper in places, and the outline of a man-made waterway stands out. The plan is to bring water into the city body itself and frame it with places to live, shop, and visit. It is a bold way to attract attention and visitors in the first years. There is a second headline feature linked to this early section. A stadium built high in the air. Reports talk about a venue set roughly 350 meters above the ground and placed inside the line. Imagine watching a match with the desert far below and a city wall rising around you. Is it guaranteed to open by a set date? No, but it is part of the current plan set, and it tells you how the team wants to use landmark spaces to send a message. The message is clear. This is not a normal build. It is meant to be a showcase. To understand progress, you need to know what is happening under the surface. People often look for shiny glass. But before the shiny glass comes, the heavy work that nobody sees. The first is piling. Piles are deep columns that transfer weight into the ground. The line needs thousands and thousands of them. This is because the structure is not a single tower with a narrow footprint. It is a continuous wall that keeps going. Loads are high. Forces from wind are serious at 500 meters of height. The base must be extremely strong. That is why many updates focus on how many piles have been placed and how quickly that number grows. For context, a famous super tall tower in another country used a few hundred piles. The line needs far more than that, even for one short phase, because it spreads weight along a very long edge. The second piece is dewatering. When you dig a deep trench, water can seep in and slow down or even stop work. Dewatering uses pumps, channels, and pipes to move that water out so teams can place foundations and start the main structure. In 2025, you can see the footprint of this system in pictures from the site. You can trace the path that water takes away from the works. This is a classic sign that crews are getting ready for the next step. Alongside that, utility corridors are forming. These are the arteries of the future city. Power, water, data, waste, they all need roots and space before any wall can rise. Zoom out for a moment, and you find Oxagon, the planned port and industry hub for NEOM. This matters because a project this large needs an efficient supply chain. Materials must arrive in huge volumes and be handled close to the site. Oxagon is where ships can dock. It is where prefabricated parts can be stored and sent on. In 2025, the shape of the port is getting clearer. Basins, edges, roads, and yards are visible. It is another piece of the puzzle, and it supports the idea that the team is building a system, not just a single facade. Now let us talk about time and money, because these two decide the speed of everything. Early stories suggested a very fast path to a huge stretch by 2030. That timeline always looked hard. As costs rose and priorities shifted, the plan narrowed to a shorter first phase with full height and signature features. Will the entire 170 kilometers be ready by 2030? No, but can a strong first section open in the early to mid-2030s? It is possible if funding stays steady, if contracts are placed on time, and if the supply chain through Oxagon and the rest of Saudi Arabia keeps pace. This is not a promise. It is a best-case shape based on what we can see in 2025. Why would such a short stretch still be worth it? Because it can prove the core idea. If a 2.5-kilometer sample runs clean power, moves people quickly, houses tens of thousands, and draws visitors, then confidence rises. With more confidence comes more capital and more partners. From there, the wall can grow in steps. The project team also claims this was always the plan. Build in modules. Learn from each stage. Improve designs and methods. Repeat. Whether that was the truth from day one, or a practical shift, later on is less important than the result. In 2025, the work is real, the focus is tight, and the path is phased. There are also the real-world questions around people and daily life. A city is not concrete alone. It is homes, schools, clinics, parks, and jobs. If the team wants early life to bloom inside the line, they need to bring in at least a few 100,000 people over the first years of operation. How will they make that happen? Part of the answer is jobs within the region. Port work at Oxagon. Tourism at coastal resorts nearby. Construction trades. Services. Part of the answer is price. Early housing must meet the budgets of the people they want to attract. Another part is feeling. Will people feel safe and free? Will they feel this is a place with art, sport, and community, not only a project? Those softer parts are still open and will decide if the city becomes a home rather than only a landmark. There are other concerns that come up again and again. One is the environment. The vision for the line says no cars and clean energy. That is a strong claim. To meet it, the region must produce and store a lot of electricity from sources like wind and sun. It must handle water carefully. It must reuse and recycle wherever it can. During construction, it must protect the coast and desert habitats as best as possible. The dewatering we talked about is temporary, but long-term water use and waste handling will need strong controls. Another concern is social impact. Reports have raised questions about people who lived in the areas now tied to the project. These issues will remain in the public eye, even more so as the country prepares to host a global football event later in the decade. The way the project team deals with these questions will affect how the world sees the city when it opens its doors. Let us come back to what we know right now. There is a clear focus on a first phase of roughly 2.5 kilometers, with 3 tall modules at full height. Inside that zone sits the hidden Marina concept. Above part of it sits the idea for a high stadium. Crews are placing a huge number of piles. Pumps and pipes for water control are active. Utility routes are forming. Camps for workers are visible. Roads for site access are in place. The nearby port is taking shape and will support deliveries. Leadership for the wider project shifted in the past year, and the public story now uses language about modules and long timelines rather than a rapid full build. Costs are high, as you would expect for a structure of this scale, so spending is being aimed at the stretch that can prove the model. So what should we expect next? The most obvious sign will be the start of large concrete works on the foundations along the first modules. After that, we may see the first vertical cores rise above the trench line. If the stadium element moves ahead on schedule, we may begin to see its base frames take shape as part of one module. On the logistics side, Oxagon should continue to add capacity. You might also hear about contracts for transit inside the line, since moving people fast will be key to the whole promise. On the living side, watch for announcements around housing releases and early bookings. If the team can show that real families and workers plan to move in, it will boost momentum. Will we ever see the full 170 kilometers? That is the big question. The answer will not come this year or next year. It will come after the first phase opens and runs for a while. If it is full of life and jobs and starts to pay its own way, growth will follow. If it looks empty or too costly to keep going, the plan could stall. The team knows this. That is why so much care is going into the first stretch. It is not only a building site, it is a live test. For a moment, imagine what a day inside the early section could feel like if it works as planned. You wake up in an apartment with services a few steps away. You take a short walk to a school or a clinic or a shop. You use high-speed transit to get across the section in minutes. The waterfront inside the wall gives you a place to meet people in the evening. You watch a match in a venue set above the ground with views you have never seen before. The desert is still there. The Red Sea is still there. But daily life is compact and quick. If this picture becomes real for a large group of people, the city will have a story worth telling to the rest of the world. Of course, even that picture comes with trade-offs. Tall walls cast shade and change how wind moves. Compact living asks people to accept close quarters. Strict control of systems is needed to keep everything running smoothly. All of this must be handled with care, or it will feel cold and rigid. The success of the early phase will depend on small human details, as much as grand engineering. Good public spaces, quiet corners, simple street food, places to sit with family, places for prayer, spaces for sport that do not need a ticket. These are the things that make a city loved. So where do we land in 2025? The line is not a myth. It is not a simple news story. It is a worksite you can point to on a map. It is a project that now grows in steps rather than in one leap. The first 2.5 kilometers carry the weight of proof. The scale above and below ground is huge. The timeline has stretched. The price tag is heavy. Yet the aim is clear. Build a slice that works. Show it to the world. Then build more. If you have watched builds before, you know this is the hard middle. The early buzz has passed. The glossy videos have faded. Now it is about deliveries, not dreams. It is about the slow progress of steel and stone. It is about steady logistics. It is about paychecks for crews and clear schedules for contractors. If the team can keep that steady beat in 2025 and 2026, then by the early 2030s, we should see a city section that people can walk through rather than only watch on a screen. As we wrap up, here is the simple takeaway. The line in 2025 is smaller than the first promise, but it is more real than many expected. It concentrates effort on a short stretch with full height and bold features. It pushes hard on the tough parts that nobody sees, like piling and dewatering. It links itself to a growing port and a broader region plan, and it faces the honest tests of money, time, people, and trust. Those tests will decide what happens next. Tell us what you think. Will the first phase open with real life inside? By the mid-2030s, would you want to live in a tall and narrow city if daily needs are close by and transit is fast? Or would you rather stay with a classic street grid? Your view matters, because a city is not only steel and concrete, it is the people who choose it. Thank you for watching. We will keep tracking the work, the deals, and the milestones you can verify. When the next major piece goes up, we will be here to show you what it means and what comes after.